Well, that didn't come out as planned. No matter, I suppose. We can always just roll over and start again. Death is always at your shoulder, and never so often as when you're in the Lair of OmnusI. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here together to mourn the loss of 5 brave adventurers that gave their lives for the people in and around the area, delineated in the adventure Princes of the Apocalypse. These heroes have gone to the great beyond, falling in wicked combat to their foes. Their names should be remembered. Galen Redmayne, powerful warrior. Aramel Nilo, gifted ranger. Azrath Riverlord, a mighty warrior. Sorrow Yadis, a rogue whose time came truly too soon. And Kyler the monk, whose prowess knew few equals for his youth. These brave heroes add their names to the roll of people claimed over the sprawling complexes that make up the Temple of Elemental Evil. They are hardly the first characters that I have, in my game mastering experience, seen perish in that adventure, and this is no different. The very real incident of this happening just last night, which of course was a total party kill, all characters wiped out, brought to mind an interesting idea for something we should talk about. As in, what is a total party kill? How is it constructed? And how to deal with it, how to move on. So that's what we shall discuss in this episode of the Lair of OmnusI. Alright, OmnusI here, and we're going to move forward. As I said, in very real life of my campaign world, all my players' characters perished. What the situation that set that up was basically they were not prepared. They were foolish in one way, shape, or form, were swept along by circumstances that were very well within their control, and taking what they thought was a shortcut, found themselves at the very end of the dungeon with all of the forces of the dungeon still very much left intact, and they were themselves bloodied and out of magic when they took on that particular fight. Didn't go well at all, considering the boss was himself a powerful spellcaster, and just trashed them. So, some things that we can learn from this. Number one, I myself am a narrative storyteller style game master. I am not a killer game master. I have very, very few character deaths on my GM tally board, comparatively to many other game masters. For one thing, I had quite a bit of investment in all those characters, different plot hooks and things that I had given to them that were progressing them along. Now that they've passed away and perished, I get to start over again. So, why do I do it? It's not something that I did, but let's just look at the total party kill for a moment. Now, What leads to a total party kill? Most game masters will say that the players are usually to blame for total party kills. After all, as an impassive judge over their world, all they do is set the challenges in place and let the players overcome the obstacles. It could be a rash of bad luck that the players suffer under. Or maybe the game master has excruciatingly good luck, landing critical hit after critical hit, seemingly never able to fail in a given session, and ultimately triumphing. Perhaps it's an encounter that the players could have sidestepped or avoided. For example, a death trap that they all stumble into. Or perhaps even it was an act of their foolishness. They did something that cried out that they needed to die for whatever sins they committed. Be it act of callous stupidity, for example, a group that backstabs and kills themselves or each other, a game master might just wash his hands of and wipe the party. There's a number of reasons. Looking at it from one end, it could be an example of just mischance. Whenever there's dice or random elements involved, there's a possibility that things could go very much against the players. If that's the case consistently and severely enough, or the threat is significant enough, yes, multiple characters can die, possibly the entire party dying. Now, it could also be, of course, because of player foolishness. Taking on a foe that's too strong, not leaving an exit for yourself, not knowing when to retreat. These are things that can lead to a total party kill as well. But let's be honest. Sometimes there are just game masters who enjoy lording the power of life and death over their players. I have known several game masters who measured their success as a game master by how many player characters they've crushed. Some of them have elaborate ways of showing off characters that have died. I know a group that has Viking funerals for their characters, where they have a ceremony and they burn the character sheet, as well as illustrations of their treasure, which is kind of a cool idea, actually. But there are game masters who do enjoy the lethality that playing God can give them, creating extremely deadly encounters repeatedly that the players eventually may fail at. So those are the components that may make up the total party kill. Now, what is the impact of a total party kill? Well, quite honestly, it depends on the style of game that you're playing. For example, according to old school rules, which is primarily centered around the players figuring their way out through a dungeon, challenging the creatures, but also being very cognizant of the fact that their characters aren't as detailed and needed for the world. They have just as much of a chance of dying by bad dice rolling as anything. So if the party gets wiped in an old school rules game, there's usually very little problem with just rolling up some new characters and having at it again. Without a lot of attachment to individual characters, or maybe if you're fond of a character, you accept that there has to be a certain element of risk for the rewards to be worth it. If your characters can't ever die because they're constantly being protected by a more than caring world, or a game master who likes to fudge dice rolls and the players know they're in no real danger, it does take some of the edge off of your triumphs. You are playing in basically easy mode in that case, the old school gamer would argue. Now, if you're not playing in a old school rules setting, you have a pretty good chance of being in a narrative adventure, which is driven by story. And if all of your principal characters die in the story, you have a couple of options. But the important thing is that all the work that you did with those characters, unless you have some sort of trite response like, well, their twin brothers step up to the plate, is you put in a fair amount of work into those characters. They had backgrounds, they had stories, they filled a void in the world, and now they're gone. And if you are going to continue going forward in that storyline, you're going to need new heroes, but you're going to have to create heroes, if you care at all about your story, that make sense in the world, have a reason to be there, and a reason to continue on the footsteps of the former adventuring group. Now, there's a variety of ways of doing that, but generally speaking, a more narrative-based game is not going to celebrate a total party kill as much. They're going to generally have more work to do for the game master and the players if they want to continue telling that story through to its completion. So, those are the effects of a total party kill as far as a group goes. Now, as far as the individual game master, again, a total party kill may go with elation on one side to the feeling, much as I am feeling right now, you're saying goodbye to characters that you had investment in, even though you were directly controlling those characters. They are now dead, and their story is effectively over. I'm not going to get into the possibilities that some games have of like resurrection and things like that. I left the possibility for these characters that they may have been lingering at death's door, may have been saved and kept for ritual sacrifices by the cultists that they fell to, which leaves the possibility that they could be saved at a later date. But the longer I go on with that, it's just really improbable and not a very acceptable solution. So, but if the death is real, again, for the game master, that can be unfortunate. You may feel that those characters dying is like a big part of your narrative, the end of a book, right in the middle of the story you were trying to tell. If you are a player, again, it depends on the investment you had in the character. If your character can comfortably be written on a 3x5 card, in a rules-like game, for instance, then you may not have put a great deal into that character and can just freely replace him. Games such as Paranoia or Kobolds Ate My Baby, and again, old school Dungeons and Dragons, you can replace that character fairly quickly, and some of them, like Kobolds Ate My Baby, they're expected to die in droves. That's how the game works. So, as far as that's concerned, the players just, okay, well, I can try a new character. Maybe excitement if they didn't care for the old character, and maybe a little regret fearing that they're going to go into an inferior character to the one that just perished. Case-by-case basis. So, a more story-driven character, however, may be somebody that player feels very comfortable with, like slipping into a familiar and very comfortable set of clothes. When they come to the gaming table, they have their persona in mind and are ready to be in that character. In that case, losing a character may lead to a little bit of a mourning period for a character that never really existed, but the pain is still there to some extent. I generally do get into my characters when I play them. I like to envision deep backstories, contemplate motivations, and generally take a bit of method acting in my gaming experience. If that role is suddenly cut out, depends on how it happened. If I feel that he died, or she, I have occasionally played cross-gender characters, if I feel that that character died unjustly, I may be angry. We have had games where I felt that my character was killed out of hand or with no great circumstance, and for the effort that I may have put into that character, I may be a bit angry about it. For games where the characters are more transitory, well, I get to try something new. I will freely admit, back when I was in college, I had a period of my time when my role-playing experience could be summed up by the general term chaotic suicidal. I would make a really cool character. The character didn't turn out to be quite as cool as I thought, and I would throw that character into bad situations to kill him so I could make a new character. It's not a good way to be. It's kind of rude to the game master, and I do regret that at this point. However, games back in those days, we were playing more of an old school style. Back when we were playing 2nd edition D&D primarily. So, the characters were a little bit of work to make, but most of them were fairly forgettable that died that way. So, but yeah, when I lose a character in this day and age, when I have more advanced in my consideration for the character, and I've played games that are more detail-rich. I've played games like Exalted with long creation checklists and all the different things that go into making characters. Dungeons and Dragons has gotten to have extra steps now where you have more investment in where the character is and is going. I enjoy games like GURPS that are extremely detailed on how your character is laid out. So I prefer those kind of games, and yeah, if I lose a character, I feel bad. If I lose the whole party, knowing that everybody is suffering that same loss as me at the same time does make it a little bit easier than losing a single character and watching the rest of those characters continue on their story. And I have done this. It sucks losing your character when everybody else is alive, especially if you feel your character is unjustly killed. But a total party kill, everybody kind of suffers in equal measure. So, what to do after a total party kill? Well, there's a possibility of picking up the story where you left off with new people. We're again not going to include ideas that the characters could have just been knocked out and instead they're imprisoned or what have you and can break free on their own. Well, that's just a cop-out for not wanting to kill off those characters, unless it's staged. If you have a story idea where it's imperative that the characters are captured so that they can break out and do something cool, that's a little bit different. But if the players are killed without, any expectations of recovery, you can pick up the story just by having different people come in. Perhaps it's another adventuring party that comes along, follows in the footsteps, or follows clues that the old party left behind. Maybe it's the last town that the party saved, wonders what happened to them and commissions a group to go and rescue them or find out what happened to them. That's certainly been the entry point to several adventures that I've run. Some very important people in the area went missing. Can you go and try to find them? Well, the next group may do just that. And if the party did any damage on their way through, they may find evidence that they left behind in their wake. An advantage to doing this is that anything that the group left behind, if the new group triumphs over the thing the former group was not able to do, and we're probably assuming here that the new group is a relatively equal level to the former group, so that you can continue the story in the middle of it, then they may be able to use the old party's things, any hooks that have been left behind with a relative component. For example, if they're going on a collect all the MacGuffins quest and they've collected a MacGuffin or two, those would probably still be there on the bodies or somewhere around that site so that the new characters could acquire them and continue on the quest. The other option, of course, is to not continue that storyline. I myself, in several occasions, if the party has been wiped out, said, okay, that's it, story's over. That can be hard for a game master who is telling a story-based game. It's relatively simple for somebody who's going, with a challenge-driven game. The world has won, the players have lost, their characters are dead. In a story-based game, that's tough because your story will never be completed. That may be good, that may be bad. In some games, you may get fatigued with your own storyline and just look for a way out of it. That seems to me to be an accurate assessment of some of the feelings that I've had in those kind of games. And when the party dies, without malice, I say, okay, it's time to try something new. Of course, I have a fairly decent depth of different games, and I've got a lot of different campaigns percolating inside my head. So, when my party died, their first thought was, well, let's make some new characters. And I was thinking to myself, well, 5th edition is still relatively new, and they haven't really got to try several of the character concepts and classes and things. So at first, my first instinct was, okay, pass around blank character sheets, go ahead and start making new characters, but make them at first level, and we'll get them up to the point where they can get into the story. Because realistically, the party hasn't really even scratched the surface of that adventure yet. They don't even really know that, well, okay. If you guys watch this, you don't know the deeper story of things, even though you may know you're in the Temple of Elemental Evil storyline. So, as far as their characters were concerned, they didn't hear about that because they had been introduced to those core concepts that there was a Temple of Elemental Evil. They just knew there were some freak cultists out there who had a water fetish. So, they started making characters, and then I thought to myself, you have all these other campaign ideas running through your head. Now, I do want to tell this story out. The book was kind of expensive for an adventure storyline, but with several sessions worth of adventures in it, it's worth it. But it occurred to me that I could go off into another campaign that I was thinking about, so I gave them some other options. I gave them options for a GURPS world. I gave them options for a Shadowrun adventure, and also one for a only Warhammer 40K game. But instead of playing Guardsmen, I want them to play Adeptus Arbites, the space police of the Imperium. I have a interesting kind of a gritty NYPD blues kind of adventure set in the Warhammer 40K universe. I think it'll be a lot of fun when I finally tell that story. But I digress. They chose to go back to 5th edition. They were having a lot of fun with it. It was comfortable for several of them, and for everybody, it's still got that newness to it, that blush. So they all made new characters up. I have the character stats. I wrote those down as they were making up their characters so that I can make up my control sheet. I can also write some hooks and things into the storyline. And I decided, confession time, I decided that I was going to take advantage of this opportunity and delve into my selection of modules so that I didn't have to come up with everything on this particular story. So I decided that I was going to go into the things that I pulled out of RPG Crate and from AdventureAweek.com. I'm going to run them through Dark Days at Stoneholm, set in a dwarven stronghold city fastness thing. So they'll have fun with that, I think. So it's a nice adventure, nice color pages and illustrations and things. Adds a selection of new monsters, which I can't wait to get onto 3x5 cards and put in my monster collection. And that way my monsters grow and grow and grow. So that's the route that we took. And I think it'll really pay off. I think it'll be a fun adventure. And when they get up through that level, through those initial levels, then they'll be able to go back to... I put them in the mountains that ring the valley that the temple is within. So it's a relatively easy thing for them to pop out into human lands, which they'll be ready for by the end of this, and ready to take over the storyline, attach new hooks, and get them started. I think I'll have them go in a different direction, but relatively easy enough to guide them. So that's how I'm dealing with this particular T.P.K. Using it as an advantage to try some new ideas, fresh concepts. A little bit disappointed one of the players decided basically to revisit basically the same build he was trying with another character, because he's interested in his builds. But all in all, I think we've got a good group. It's a good mix. Lots of spellcasters. Should be fun. So that's how we're going about it. How you end up going about it, if you have a T.P.K, is up to you. The nature and demeanors of your group, what your ambitions are. If you just happen to have that perfect storm of circumstance and have a T.P.K in your hands, it can be an opportunity to try new things. Hopefully, one of the better things that can come out of a T.P.K too is your players may improve. If they have graphic evidence that you're not playing around, that you're not afraid to kill a character off here and there, it's never more adequately expressed than wiping out an entire party. To let them know that their characters aren't the special snowflakes that the gods will open up the heavens, shine down upon, and extract from any bad situation. No, their characters are willingly throwing themselves in peril for power and treasure and whatever other motivations you have, and sometimes the good guys lose. At least the risk that death is a horribly botched roll of yours away, or that critical that other guy is going to throw away, brings spice to what can otherwise be by the numbers group. So, the T.P.K, it can be inconvenient. It can be painful. But it is an opportunity. How you go from it determines what the next opportunity is going to give to you. If you can say, in this game, you have to be on your toes, or your characters will die, well, maybe the players will take that a little bit more seriously, and maybe they'll be more cautious, wiser, and more appreciative of the mortality of their characters, and sometimes how special those characters are. If they form an attachment and don't want to see those characters die, and they actually make the efforts to make sure those characters don't die, well, I think you've done a good thing then. We'll talk a little bit later about GM fudging and manipulating your universe, but the T.P.K, it can be a reality. It's happened to me, and it will happen at some point for many of you. So, with that, let's roll the bodies, shall we? Is it a little too soon? I don't know. Anyhow, the treasure for this session of the Lair of OmnusI is something that I got recently out of one of the RPG crates that I've gotten that I've actually been using a fair amount. It's this nice little dry erasable character sheet showing the things that frequently change on your character. Spot for your character, hit points, resources like healing potions and things that you could expend, maybe scrolls if you go through scrolls, spell slots, and ammunition. And on the back, quick area for notes and things. This is basically kind of an emergency character sheet, so somebody could write down stuff real quickly without having to constantly be writing on their character sheet, and keeps your character sheet intact longer. This particular one came from Ben Mirabelli at benmirabelli.com, and honestly, it's fine. It's beautiful, looks nice, it's very functional with a dry erase marker. I use it for my GM NPC. Who also died in the total party kill. He was one of the first ones to die, as is appropriate for an NPC. Stood there to try to keep the players alive a little longer, give them a chance to extricate themselves from the foolishness they found themselves in. But he died. Something like that can, as I said, save you from having to constantly replace your character sheets as you erase through them. Of course, people who are using digital character sheets won't need that as much, but unless you are perfectly situated that you can, easily change things on the fly, sometimes having something like that to serve as scratch paper or, a quick place for, quick notes and such, may feel a little bit more natural, more organic for people. So it has proven to be a pretty useful resource for me. That's why I'm recommending it for the treasure. Now, I did say we're rolling the bodies, so I'm going to pick one of these characters at random, and we're going to give you guys a piece of the treasure. All right. Okay. Rolling the body of the ranger. He had a bow on him. Now, it wasn't a particularly lovely bow. It did faintly radiate magic. But the thing is, it's covered in like feathers and crude talismans, teeth and things dangling from thongs. It's heavily reinforced with metal, and it has a sharp blade along one edge of it. There's nothing lovely about it. This is not an elven craftsman's weapon. This looks like something that was created by an orc. A very bloody-minded orc. It doesn't fit my decor, so I'm giving it to you. Feel free to write it on your character sheet. You probably would like to have this if you see me and we end up playing a game together. It's a nice bow. Just, again, doesn't fit what I have. Also, in addition to that, you guys can have 12 lair points. And if you watched my prior lair, I kind of was at a dark point as far as the lair was going. If you slogged through that, tell you what, give yourself a bonus 10 lair points. Make sure you note all of this on your character sheet for the next time. So, from the Lair of OmnusI, I am OmnusI once again, with death ever at my shoulder, wishing you safe travels.